Hey, welcome to Side Project Spotlights. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
I'm Aaron.
We should probably start out with who we are as a group. So, who we are Philly Cocoa, which is like kind of a Cocoa Heads meetup in Philadelphia. And this is our first attempt at making a small little app, a watch app specifically, and recording the progress and see how we go.
That's right. So, so how do we start? How do we come up with this whole project? This is something you had on your mind, Koto, for a long time, right? The Kanji app that we're going to talk about today. But we had a whole list of possible applications, but we kind of decided on this one.
I mean, we kind of went around. We kind of done a lot of ideations because we were trying to come up with a project of some kind to work on together collectively, so that we can sort of not only build up our skills, but also encourage other members to try to build their own projects. I think the goal of Philly Cocoa was always to encourage education and making stuff, generally speaking. So we sort of celebrated the makers in the past. And we kind of got away from that partially because of, the whole pandemic stuff.
Yeah.
But we kind of want to bring that back. And so this is a sort of an attempt to sort of bring us back to sort of like coming up with stuff that I think when iOS first came out, the SDK, I think there was a lot of enthusiasm of building things and creating your own little apps.
I remember all kinds of crazy apps were coming out back then. In the early days, we had everything. I had ones that like just made weird sound effects. There was that one that was like liquid in a phone, like just like a beer glass or something. It had like lighter apps, and then you had like, actually useful stuff too. But I didn't download the useful stuff in the beginning. I just downloaded the fun stuff. But so I mean, we want to. I like the being able to see a project unfold. I think this is a type of thing I wish had existed, years ago when I started. I mean, maybe it did. I just didn't find them, obviously. But I think it can be useful to people, hopefully. And even if it's not useful to anybody else, I think it's useful to us to record our progress here, because it at least forces us to have a meeting and to have a reason to be making progress and to put into words, the thoughts in our heads.
Sure.
Right, Aaron. And so we decided that this project, we'll describe the Kanji project in a second, but we also decided that Aaron here is going to be like the project, host for it. So we're going to put on your Apple account, and we're using your GitHub account for this stuff. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. And
we set that up right after the meetup last week. So just the GitHub repo and just access for everyone, but I still need to set up the actual app on the Apple account. So we have to figure we wait till we actually have some features built before we do that.
Yeah, I always end up making one of those SKUs, those bundle IDs first, and then I have this app that is a bad bundle ID that I never use.
Well, it's actually kind of funny because my general habit is to start with the app ID, and even almost make the icon first, the app icon, just so it feels real. So
right. So
it's definitely you can definitely do that if you want.
So
there's no rush, but yeah.
So what's our app code name? Right now we're calling it Kanji flashcard.
Yeah. So our code name is Kanji flashcard, which is nothing special. So
it's descriptive anyway.
So contextually speaking, we had a lot of different types of apps. Quickly, I think I'm just going to look at my notes here. We thought about doing like specifically a watch app, and I think part of it, at least from my motivation, was that I never built a watch exclusive app. And I think it was a nice little project that there wasn't going to be a lot of, there wasn't going to be a lot of complicated UI. There wasn't going to be
Right.
a lot of business logic, because watch apps by default are not meant to be used in terms of minutes. They're meant to be used in terms of seconds.
Yeah, right. Quick, very fast interactions, or use like a complication, or even like a notification to kind of as a primary way to get into it. And we all watch users, right? So we all have different apps we use a lot. And well, I do. I use my watch more than you guys, possibly.
Well, here's the problem with the whole working at home. So I'm a consultant, so I work at home.
Yeah.
I don't go out much, particularly in the past few years for obvious reasons. But
oh my God, it's been years now.
But the problem is that I don't charge my watch because I don't really need it.
Well,
do I have access to a modern watch, which I'm not sure if it's a Series 3 because it's not exactly mine. But
so we lost you there for a second, but I think you were saying you don't have access to a really modern watch, and you don't charge it much because you don't go out much. Right. Whereas I'm in the similar boat that I'm home, right, working home, but I have a Series 6 that I finally upgraded from like a 2 last year. And I use it all the time, but I use it mostly for the health tracking, which I still find valuable even if I'm not going out, places.
So I mean, I don't know, Aaron, which version do you have?
I have the Series 6 also. My first one.
So watch. So that's good though. That means that for test devices, we have 2 of them that are. Oh God, we accidentally set off Siri.
Siri. Yeah.
That happens all the time. Still, so we have some modern devices, and we have like a Series 3. Which is the one that won't die.
Yeah, probably. If I had to guess. But for you, Aaron, your use case is much more for workout reasons.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I got it. I thought I was going to do some experimental sensor stuff with it, but maybe I'll still get to that at some point. But I end up using it mainly for the fitness stuff.
Yeah,
which I find extremely useful when not being able to do the kind of long distance endurance stuff that I used to do before the pandemic. So just kind of keeping me motivated with the different workouts they have. Fitness Plus workouts been surprisingly useful.
Really?
Just to have something lined up and just fire it up and do something.
So this project here, what we're trying to do is basically a Kanji flashcard. I think for me, I know very, very basic Japanese, but I don't have a very good level of vocabulary, particularly with recognizing kanji. So it's just a simple product. It's just a simple app. There are plenty of great apps out there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So, but there's very few watch exclusive apps. So basically a watch app that doesn't require iOS or the iPhone connected to it. So that was an interesting little tweak that I wanted to play with and experiment with SwiftUI on watch.
Which is isn't that the only way of doing UI? No,
I mean before it was like traditional UI kit, but it always felt a little bit clunky, like overkill.
Okay, well I think maybe I'm thinking because didn't SwiftUI originate from the watch side?
Oh yeah. The inspiration to build for so for sure.
It feels most at home on that screen because there's no distractions of of a big phone screen and all the other features. It's just much more centered. So we wanted to build an app here that makes sense on a watch too. As we said, we use it mostly for fitness or health tracking, but the apps that we use or that I use, for instance, on the watch are ones that make sense on a watch. So I use like a fasting app as part of my routine. It makes sense that's there because it gives you a little complication to see your progress, and you can tap a button to quickly start and stop. Or I'll use like a podcast app, like Overcast watch app, which just lets you have controls to pause and play. Or a calendar, complication. So a lot of the stuff we use as a complication. But then the other kind of app that I think makes sense are things that are like you want them to be timely. So one of the things about this is we want to be able to look at these flashcards wherever we are, whenever we are, or maybe even at specified times. And I remember years ago, I don't remember when I first read about this, but there were like learning apps that were essentially services that sent you text messages, right? And it kind of sounds a lot like that, where you would just get these messages that would, like vocab words or whatever, so that you could break up a complicated topic into these small chunks and learn them when you had a free moment. So it's kind of what we're doing here with the kanji card. You can do it wherever you are. You can stand in line at the bank. You can do some kanji vocab.
I mean, ideally, we would take advantage of maybe the notifications and sort of make something a little more custom, and then they can just react to it as they come during the day.
Right.
And maybe you would have like a specific amount that you would want to be quizzed on periodically, and that's where we would provide sort of the custom settings for that.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we're trying not to be we want to limit the amount of like user controls or UI specifically that the user has to do.
We want to use the screen to show the most kanji we can.
Right. So on some level, we do have to do some basic tracking because we've tried this before, me and Aaron, using UIKit on iOS a while ago.
And then we kind of attempted to do a SwiftUI version, but that really never got off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is the third iteration of this idea, but the first time using the watch.
It's the third iteration of SwiftUI, right? Are we up to the third?
Well, not even, because the first time we did it for iOS, we did it using UIKit and the Hero library, which is a sort of an animation library that allowed you to do UI transitions in a much less convoluted way than the traditional way. You can do a lot of like morphings of rectangles and flippings of cards and stuff like that. It just felt a little bit better. But it was also very convoluted because it was very it had a lot of setup that made it a little bit tough to identify like which UI converts to like transitions to the other UI in a less convoluted way, but still convoluted.
Right.
So SwiftUI would have helped us a lot with that, but we never got around to doing the SwiftUI version.
Right. So but now I was saying the SwiftUI is now on it's like third year of existence, so it's kind of like 3 versions in. It's still but it was definitely really wonky in the beginning. So this might be the time.
I think regardless of which version, I don't think for what we were doing, what we were trying to attempt, at least if we were to commit to the Watch app version, we would ever run into the issues that we ran into with the other version, with the iOS version. Like Watch app, you're very constricted, right? You have to commit to sort of like a very small screen size, and so thus you strip out a lot of the unnecessary stuff, which is great in this case, and it'll keep us focused for sure for this project.
So technical issues really. This you have to have a kanji database of some kind. You have to be able to load that. You have to be able to display kanji, which luckily is kind of taken care of for us, right? Because it's a Unicode based language. I mean, it's in Unicode, so you can just use you can display it that way. We think anyway. I haven't verified that. But should work theoretically.
So the initial idea, I guess, at least where I was thinking, was involving core data to store the database and even store some of the settings.
You can do that on the watch. You can do a core data.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's much more constrained though, because you have a lot of resource constraints on the watch.
You do. So that's the challenge for us, is whether or not it's, because before we didn't even bother on iOS. We actually took a JSON from there was a GitHub repo. It's fairly well maintained for Kanji. It's like a Kanji database, but the JSON is enormous, like obnoxiously so. So Aaron, I guess you could kind of discuss how you managed to break it up into individual JSONs. But that was actually a pretty sweet deal in that sense.
Yeah, it was just now I'm trying to remember how I did. I just looked up some stuff on turning JSON into Swift objects, and I made the whole thing I was using just a Swift playground because it was just going to be a one-off thing that we would run to split it all up into different bite-sized packages that we could load.
Cool,
I guess. But
so we're gonna use that as our source.
I'm not sure if we're gonna use that or because the main problem with that one was that Kotaro, you don't really remember where it is you got it from, so we can attribute it. So
right.
That was the main problem with that.
I think when you looked at that one, I think you provided the link to the GitHub repo. It's Kanji Alive.
I don't know if that was the same one because I didn't see any JSON. I just saw like a CSV and an Excel file. So I don't know if that's actually the same one.
The same one, right?
I think it might be a different one. So
okay, because this one is under the Creative Commons attributed.
Right. Yeah, that one seems like legit. We can use it.
Mm-hmm. A CSV file can still be parsed.
It can still be parsed. I'm just as far as doing exactly the same thing that I did last time.
Anyway.
Okay, so
right.
So let's get
a little bit different.
Since we're talking about the technical stuff, how do we start this project? Like, what kind of minimal infrastructure do we need to set up, or did we set up last week in order for this to work? Like we talked, I think, briefly. Like we had to set up a GitHub repo, right?
Yeah. So I can. Do we want to share? Well, it's a private repo, but basically, we created Aaron created a project that it's a private repo,
which you can do now for free on GitHub, right?
Yes.
So you used to have to pay for that privilege.
Yeah,
and
I was paying for a whole bunch of months for no reason.
Yeah,
when they switched.
We decided on a private repo to start because
just keeps the noise out.
Yeah, it keeps noise out, and it's there's something to be said for doing development completely in public, but I think that requires its own kind of skill to do well, and it's
that's
just
a future
easier
project when we go open source.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, and this way, we don't have to worry as much about how clean is this these commits and all this other stuff. Like we can just focus on building app. We're trying to eliminate anything that could distract us from building the thing. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm easily distracted. Like like other things in life come up, and you're like.
So one of the things that I did do when Aaron created the GitHub was create a GitHub project.
Right,
which allowed us to. It's basically if anyone knows Trello, it's fundamentally the same thing for the most part. But we would create issues as opposed to like you start out with cards and you convert them to issues. Okay. They're like there's columns for to do, done. What was it? In review and then done. I'm trying to remember which one.
You have like to do, I think, doing, done, and reference.
Yeah, and you can just slide the cards to each one.
The columns, just like in Trello, represent some kind of workflow or status for everything, and they could be whatever you want. But I think that's kind of the default. And so Aaron created this, and they invited us because we already had GitHub accounts, so we have push access to it.
Right.
And we have the initial repo. And do we have an initial Xcode project in there now?
Yeah, I also made an Xcode project, like a blank watch app.
Based on like the template from Xcode, and you put that in there.
In fact, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to actually, he also added, thankfully, he added a GitHub gitignore.
So, he did?
For Swift, which
that's the other thing. Yeah. Always got to remember the gitignore.
That's easy to forget.
I set it up. I set it up set the repo up on GitHub first.
And it adds one.
Good job.
It's an option.
Yeah.
You can add a gitignore, and there's like a million options. And Swift I
work use GitLab, and I always just make up the stuff on my own and push it up. I don't make it on the system. I don't create the repos in the system. But I used to get my gitignore from some project that was on GitHub. It was like a gitignore repo, and it had like a gitignore for every type of project you would have, and so it would have all these kinds of extra things to ignore.
So very useful. Where they get the templates. I don't know if that's the same repo that the templates are based on, but they're built into the creation process on GitHub.
Important to put the gitignore in, otherwise you're going to accidentally have a whole bunch of stuff getting in your repo, especially build objects if they're not ignored properly. And we don't want that because 3 of us are working on this, and we don't want to be pushing a bunch of junk back and forth.
I've pushed just a simple commit, just change the text to a button, just to at least get the process rolling. It's just one of those things. I'm a really big proponent of like sometimes it's the hardest thing to do is to just start.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So just putting something up there is sort of a commitment in itself.
We do. Does it have a bundle ID of some kind? Don't we need one in order for us to run it on?
We do, although again, I'm not sure.
And we're gonna do this. So the way that like I've worked with a lot of external developers on like running an app store account, and normally the easiest way of doing this is if everybody is a member of the developer team that is hosting the project. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's the easiest thing. So if it's on Aaron's account, then we need the bundle identifier of the app created there, and then all of us need to be members of that account if possible. And I don't know if that's possible in your case.
I think
so. We set that up
us
last week, and I invited you.
Yeah,
we did. We've realized that you can use like a personal account and still invite team members.
So I have access to it. I haven't checked on if the automated if it automatically, when you created that project with the bundle ID, the only caveat is that we haven't saved. I think the provision hasn't been updated yet, so that you know how it does an automatic generation of the provision based on the bundle ID. I'm not sure if that.
So I see no apps in there. So
Right,
you haven't created the app yet, but you created the
so I have to sign in there and create that on whatever it is,
App Store
Connect.
Yeah. So you created the bundle identifier already, right? On the
in Xcode. But.
Oh, in Xcode. Yeah. So that works too. I mean, there's so many ways of doing this. I'm used to doing it on the web with certificates, IDs, and profiles, the old school way. But if you did it already, I'm trying to look if I have access. I don't think I have. I do not have access to their certificate identifiers and profiles. That's like a separate checkbox in App Store Connect users. If we don't have access to that, we can't see those. You might need to give us access to that.
He gave us admin access, or he certainly gave me.
Yeah,
access.
admin, but there's an extra checkbox which is unrelated, which is separate.
Oh, right.
And you need to check that for certificates, identifiers, and profiles.
Right.
And it's never clear to me when you need to do that, but pretty much every developer I've worked with has had to have it. Mm-hmm. So, but it's still a little unclear to me. Like,
so if you go to App Store, if you go to App Store Connect, and then you
go to our users accounts, and you edit them. There should be a checkbox underneath the regular where you choose admin or whatever. There should be a checkbox that says certificates, identifiers, and profiles. If it works the same way as my account does, because I can't see it. But there should be an identifier. Then if Xcode made one in the certificates, identifiers, and profiles.
Yeah.
And so then that's the bundle identifier we'll need to add to the project. And then if we're all in Xcode, so the way you do this as a team, this is for like people maybe listening unfamiliar with this, you all want to be a member of the same team. So in Xcode, you could choose on the project level like what team you're building this for, and then like the bundle identifier. So if you actually set things up ahead of time, it's all kind of automatic. You just pick the team. If you're the right member of that team, then it'll kind of it's like almost like magic now. It works quite well. When there's an error, that's a problem, you know. But if there's no errors, then it works.
Goodness. Dude, do you remember Provision Hell?
I remember
those were the days, man.
What was there was used to be a button in Xcode fix.
These young kids these days, they got it easy. They don't know the hell we went through.
At least Xcode doesn't. I don't think I have that fix issues button, or they fix something. Remember that fix button they had in there where you hit it and it would break everything? I remember some developer I was working with on something, right? They hit this button, right, and it obliterated so much stuff in the like certificates, identifiers, and profiles. Like it messed up so many things that it took me hours to manually fix it. Mm-hmm. Now, Xcode's come a long way, and the automatic signing stuff is what I use primarily. So just to recap, when starting a new project, you need a GitHub repo. You need to invite your team to the GitHub repo with the right level of access. You need to create the bundle identifier, which is like unique identifier that for the App Store. And you need to add your teammates to your developer account on Apple and give them the right number of access, including probably certificates, identifiers, and profiles. And then you need to create that app in the App Store Connect using that bundle identifier you made, whether you created in Xcode when you created the project or whether you did it manually. And then once that app is created, then all the records are set up, and you can basically start doing things like make a build and do an internal test flight and that kind of deal, which we can talk about when we actually get to that stage. So it's a lot of steps, and it sounds like a lot. And maybe we could create like a checklist or something for people at some point. But it sounds like a lot, but it's a lot simpler than it used to be. So just know that.
Yeah.
People
know that.
Yeah, know that. It could be so much worse.
Could have been so much worse.
Yeah,
when you have to go to build settings and toggle stuff on and off and anyway.
I mean, yeah, you do still nowadays basically just stay in Xcode is my advice. And if you primarily can stay in Xcode, you can do almost everything in there, and it makes much more sense. And yeah, there's a whole gazillion different options for the provisioning profile you can add. But we don't really need anything special right now, I don't think. But when we do, we can hit the checkbox and I'll add the keys.
I was thinking interesting. I don't have access to Aaron's in the developer.apple.com. Oh, is that why?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay,
you don't have access to certificates, identifiers, and profiles unless he can offer that.
Until he can offer
unless
that.
he can do that. And you do it in
Maybe
App Store
I can't. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. If you go it's possible. If you go to App Store Connect and you go to users and access, and then let's see, and you click on one of ours, and you hit edit, you may not, if it works like a regular, like the business accounts does, there should be a checkbox down there.
Because I'm pretty sure I checked all the boxes, so maybe they actually have to. There has to be an app that's there.
There should be underneath roles. There should be additional resources, and it says stuff like access to reports, access to certificates, identifiers and profiles, access to like cloud managed developer ID certificate, that kind of thing. And they seem to be adding things to that every day because there's some new stuff in here I didn't see before. But again, I don't know what you're using a personal. So one of the issues with this, you're using a personal account, and then I'm used to using a company, whatever they call it now, a team. I don't know what they call it. They call it a company account.
Company account, basically.
And essentially, one is like you have a literal LLC or something versus just your legal name. And using a personal account is a lot faster and definitely a way that most people maybe go when they're starting out. But it may have limitations. It definitely used to have more limitations on what you could do. So we're not sure about this, but we'll have to see if we have any issues. I have to download this thing into Xcode and try to run it. I can't do that right now because my Xcode beta. So my problem is I have an M1 Mac, and I'll try on your app, but another app I was playing with, the Xcode beta, like Swift, keeps breaking. It keeps using up all my machine's memory, and I can't do anything. It's something with SwiftUI and like the parser, and like the Swift parser front end starts up and just eats up all my memory, and I don't know what's triggering it. It's bizarre.
Did you make sure? Because I think just like the iOS version was a little different from the release candidate, like the actual release version was like maybe like a version or two higher. I think Xcode was similar. I'm not sure.
It has the same build number as the release candidate was, and I mean, I did re-download it myself.
Okay.
I have Xcodes installed to manage multiple.
So we had said, just as Aaron's working out, seeing if he can add the permissions, we had said we were trying to set up a deadline. So our dead deadline would be prior to Christmas.
Yeah, that's the idea. We want something in the store ready for public consumption.
Right. Part of it's because, it's Christmas and people are just getting their new watches and stuff, so we want to be ahead of that game. And the other is, like, we wanted to make sure that we had a very definitive deadline.
We don't want this to drag on forever.
Right. Good or bad, we got to finish it.
Finish as much as you can in an app.
Yeah. And then, but in theory, I think, like, Apple tends to actually shut down their app store. Maybe about on the 23rd or 24th. So we actually have to get it in by like the 20th at the latest. Would be my
not
guess.
A lot of time.
Would be a guess. Like it's always different, but like around that time period, that's when we have to make sure we have to get it in before that.
There's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
There's Halloween, which probably is not a big deal, but there's Thanksgiving that comes up and people tend to take multiple days vacation then.
It's October now. October, November. So we have 2 months.
So
less than 2 months.
Which means we need to really.
Oh no! Wait, no, I'm wrong. We have a little more than 3 months.
Yeah,
a little less than 3 months. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that was bad.
But we need to start. I guess iterating on it. We need to we're going to use what kind of are we going to use? How are we going to arrange the development process? Do you have like a particular now the words are escaping. Do you use a particular development process, Kotaro, that you like to use? Do you like to use like Scrum? Obviously, not going to use like formal Scrum, but do you use something with like sprints, or do you do continuous, Kanban style, or something, a combo of things, or do you do waterfall? Like, what do you like to do that works for you?
It's tough because like I've worked on game jam games, which only last 2 weeks at most, maybe a month. And usually, it's a very casual thing, right? So I almost treat this like a game jam in many ways. Having said that, I know the capacity plays a big role in whether or not a project is finished. So if I don't have capacity, and I know that I'm like the main cog in that wheel, it's very likely that it's not going to get done, the game, meaning.
Yeah.
Or if, like, there's always something that could pop up, so you have to account for that possibility. So in many ways, ideally, we would get this done even before beginning of December as like as a primary product. So like majority of the time in December is spent testing and making sure that the app is working accordingly. So in theory, our implementation, we want to get done by, let's say, a prototype done by end of October, at least a working prototype. And then November, we sort of like fix and refine and get it to a point where we're happy with it. It also gives us breathing room, because even this past week when we were talking about doing it, we didn't really do too much, honestly, in terms of like the setup or just trying to tweak things and learn things or research things.
So I'm just saying, because there's 3 of us and we have different. This is like a part-time thing. We have to find time to do it. Maybe a backlog, and we just pick things off of it as we go. Maybe do I don't know if we want formal sprints, or if we just want to do like the Kanban style, where we just do how whatever capacity we have and we just that are in progress, and then we just do it that way, and we prioritize the.
The funny thing is, like, I'm very ignorant actually about like watchOS.
Me too.
UI, which is actually kind of funny, because like I'm thinking, okay, well, where would we put the settings, right?
Yeah. So UI, So when you're building an app, I mean, besides figuring out like how do you organize the team, so that'll be like the development process you use, like you use Scrum or you use whatever. That's something that's separate. But where do you start? Do you start designing from the UI perspective? That seems to make the most sense a lot of times.
I do. I do personally, but I think like there's also a consideration. Like, for example, for Aaron doesn't need to worry about my capacity for UI, because his focus, at least ideally, would be for him to get the kanji data, whatever JSON that he can get, and then we commit to like a list of items he needs to parse. So like the kanji character, obviously, I guess it's Unicode. The stroke count, the meaning, and maybe like the hiragana, the associated hiragana, and maybe like the radical. Like that's about it.
Right. So so we have a backlog we've been starting to create, like a to-do list, we'll say. In the project parlance on GitHub, they're under the to-do. But they're kind of big right now. I think some of them need to be broken down a little bit.
Agreed.
And
actually, so they're in the to-do docket. There's like stuff that's going to be like later down the road. So like App Store metadata, screenshots. We don't need to worry about that.
No.
Even the website domain. That's just me just spitballing.
Well, that's where you put the stuff. You just put all these things, and then you prioritize them. Right. And then you work on them.
Like the prep the App Store. The App Store app and the bundle ID, that's probably something that Aaron could be assigned.
This probably needs to happen like next, and then because we need to be able to all run the app on our devices, or at least run in the simulator. But I think ideally we want to be able to run it on our watches. So get that infrastructure working. 'Cause I've never done a watch app before, so I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of learning.
How to get it all set up and running. So I think that should be next step for we need to get it. We need to have a project that has a bundle identifier and everything that we can then and get it working on our individual watches. And then once we have that build process, then we can actually start doing other things like we need then we can start talking about like wireframes this week. And
can I? Yeah. I just started a wireframe.
Okay.
I'm assigning the Prep App Store app to you, Aaron.
Okay.
And then I'll let you. And if you have any questions, feel free to just ask in the group chat. And we'll help you out there. So I'll just do a quick screen share. I don't think I can share, by the way. Oh no, I can.
I turned it on.
Cool.
So if we have a visual version of this, you'll see a screen.
So what I have here is just a very basic watch card. Ideally, what I'm going to do is, basically you tap in, it'll flip to show it, and then I think the way I'm going to try to do it is like if you pan left or pan right, it'll give you like a UI will open up to say correct or incorrect. We'll have to figure out the terminology, but basically the whole point is like the user has to say I got it or I didn't get it.
Right, you have to because it's kind of like a little quiz.
Yeah, it's a quiz. Yeah, it's a flashcard. So
what are the options? Is it going to be like a multiple choice?
No. Basically, it's up to the user. I think the thing about flashcards, and this is why it's so basic.
It's not, okay. So it's me checking myself.
Yes.
Okay.
Fundamentally, it's you check. I mean, we could play the game of like, like multiple choice, but even multiple choice can be gamed. And I'd rather the responsibility be defined by you because it's meant to be a personal, like a
learning tool.
A learning tool. Yeah. Like we're not trying to like shame you.
No, right, and we're not trying to. Yeah, it's just literally flashcards are some you hold yourself to.
Right. Now the key thing, and I know like this has already been figured out by a lot of flashcard enthusiasts, Kanji enthusiasts. I forgot the name of the whole process, but if we keep track of which ones that people have said yes and no to, will help inform what we give them next.
Okay.
The next character that they can like see how far they can level up.
So there's some kind of algorithm for determining what the next.
Yeah. There is a certain type of. I hesitate to use the word algorithm, but
they'd have to be
some type of process.
There's some process to determine it.
Yeah. I have to talk to my colleague that knows this better than me. But that's part that I would probably be trying to get in. I'm hoping in the case I can also share this wireframe with everyone once we sort of agree on a UI.
Yeah. So this is in
in Sketch.
Sketch.
Yeah.
A recent version of Sketch.
Yes. So Sketch. Yes, recent version, and it is using Sketch Cloud so that we can do some collaborations. It's not as full feature as say something like Figma, where Figma is much more of a collaboration tool around wireframes and prototype, and UI in general. Sketch starts as a Mac app and then kind of like as a consumer, it will sync to the cloud, and then you can kind of manage it there.
Do we all need be paying members for?
No. Especially if you're just looking to not contribute, but to like comment.
Yeah,
I guess.
So this is a good example of this is a tool you're very familiar with, and as you said, maybe Figma may be the more popular tool, maybe even it's the more appropriate tool for collaborative stuff sometimes. But this works. This is what you know. So we're trying to avoid going down like rabbit holes or yak shaving, I think is what's called, right? We're just like building. We don't want to just be constantly
Well, the last thing,
dealing with tools, like what are we going to use to build this? We're just going to
right, like this is like quick and dirty.
Exactly, and that's how we're going to roll here at Side Project Spotlight. Quick and dirty.
That's right. None of this high fidelity wireframe BS.
Yeah,
we ain't doing that stuff.
I use Solmic wireframes.
Yep,
I think that's what they call it now.
That's perfectly fine.
I've been using that for many years. And
I mean, a scan of a piece of paper is fine.
Yeah, actually, I've done whiteboard. I've done the scanning of the paper thing. Yeah. That works really well too because you can just quickly see it. So anything, you got to just start somewhere, and we're at the point now. This app itself is actually very simple. So from a UI standpoint, because it's just a watch app, it can't be very complicated. So I think we're going to actually be able to go from your initial sketches to prototyping in SwiftUI pretty fast, this week.
So
that's one of the advantages of
the
SwiftUI.
schedule. The schedule is hopefully.
Hopefully, that's our schedule. This is all theoretical. We'll find out. Listen to our adventure here, and you'll find out what we think of SwiftUI in practice.
As we cry in pain. So I think we can do something like so we can use core data to store all the data, all the kanji and stuff to start. I would probably lean on Aaron to handle that part because he has the experience to do it. Not only so, if we can find the original data set, the original JSON, maybe we start there. If we can find a better set of JSON, more modern set, maybe we would go with that one too. But I will lean on Aaron for that. I don't mind handling UI related stuff, so I'll focus on finishing up the wireframes probably by the end of this week, just to make sure that we have something to work with. And Steve, I would want to get a sense of what you'd be willing to do, what your capacity is, what you're interested in for this particular project.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much experience with any of the SwiftUI or the watch stuff, so really open anything. As for capacity, I mean, it's. I mean, I think we're all pretty busy. It's not a ton, but I can make time for it. And then obviously I have to do I'll do the podcast editing here and post this stuff soon. Probably we'll probably be able to get this stuff out within like a couple weeks. We have to get accounts set up, especially with Apple. That can take a while.
Right.
To get an email address. I guess we're just going to use like a Gmail thing, or we're going to use a Philly Coca address.
Yeah, use the Gmail one just to make things quick.
So I have to set that up, and then I'll do that. And then last time I did this with Apple, we'll probably use Anchor to put it up there, but we want to control our Apple thing, which means I need to make an Apple ID out of that Gmail address, and then I need to create the Podcast Connect account with that. And then you have to have an episode on the feed. And then you can submit it to Apple and get art and with artwork and stuff. So I'll be in touch about the artwork size, whatever it is now.
I'll work on that.
Size. And then once it's done, it usually takes Apple like a little while to review it. It's like it kind of has like its own app review thing. You have to wait, and then eventually they say okay. And then once it's in the Apple directory, I don't think we really need to worry about most of the other directories. I mean, Spotify is getting bigger, but really we only probably care about the Apple directory for the moment to start with. That way, it'll also feed into all the iOS podcast apps, including the official one at that point. Right. And since this is a watch app, that kind of makes sense. That we care about people who use Apple products more than anything else. But there's a whole bunch of directories that you could connect to. It's just that in the past I used the automatic system with like Anchor to do that, but then they control it, and so I don't necessarily want to do that again. But that can be done this week. So we'll have something within hopefully a week. Maybe a little more, depends on how long Apple takes, and we can have this episode actually published.
Sure,
we're hoping. And for coding, I don't know. I think it depends on what we're going to have coming up on the project wise. We don't want to be, stepping on each other's toes. Although with SwiftUI, is it easier, harder, the same for UI collaboration as with like UI Kit? Because I mean, if you're using Storyboards, especially, it can be a pain in the butt in UI Kit, but.
That's a good question. I've never...
Because a lot of this is like working directly with the UI.
What's funny thing about Storyboards is like, I think people, like, it gets a lot of crap, but a lot of times it reminds me a lot of like old school Unity. where people would have to do these sort of like, I'm working in this scene, don't touch the scene, and then once they finish the commit, then everybody brings it down and then they make their changes. That was old school, but or even like old school or anything binary related. In the case of like storyboards, is always like a really convoluted XML file that you're dealing with. So at SwiftUI, it's not so bad, but there is potential. Luckily, SwiftUI is not like so convoluted. Like if you're doing like a SwiftUI view and it's over like 300 lines of code,
split it up.
You might want to look at that. It's really bizarre, and it actually looks longer than it really is. Like half the time, I'm really shocked about like SwiftUI views. They're very rarely longer than 300, 400. If they are, then maybe you want to refine that. So we could do some amount of, and this is a watch app, so I don't suspect it's going to be that dramatic.
There's not a lot. Yeah, I mean, it may not be a whole lot of stuff to do, but I suggest, because we're almost out of time. So like we're booting up the podcast here. We're figuring out the Kanji database. I think what we need to do is make sure that we have issues for whatever we're working on, and we move them into the in progress, and that way we just know who's working on what. Right. And I guess what if we're working on something and then we're not working, like we worked on it for an hour or whatever, what's a good practice here to know that to like release that, to put it back into the to do pile if we're gonna say someone else can work on this now, or do we just leave it in progress if we're saying like I'm the only one going to work on this? Like what does it mean to be in progress? I think
in progress means you're working on it, right? So if not, and maybe you want to put it back into do's, then add a comment and put it back into do's. Maybe we'll start adding labels in terms of like what type of to do, what I wouldn't say state, but like I'll leave labels alone for now. But
basically we can organize it as we go along to make sense. Like sometimes I'll use labels for like, here's a UI section, here's database stuff, here's you can create like another like level of organization with the labels,
or even like something where we would say like in review or needs review or something of that nature, and like add another column. So like the reference column is really just more like if let's say we finish this process and we just want to refer it as a reference of like, okay, this is how you get this done, or this is how this was designed, then you can move it there, as opposed to the done section, which is kind of like...
I'll probably put like the podcast info over there or something. Okay, so we also need like to store credentials somewhere. There's like a whole bunch of little things we need to work on this week. So it feels like by next week, what is our goal then for this meeting next week?
I think the goal, I want to finish the wireframes.
So we can review wireframes.
Right. I'll probably set up a timeline, deadlines. That's also my to-dos of like committing to like, okay, these are what I'm thinking our timeline should be, and then we can kind of like refine that there. Based on
some like, well, I mean, we have like some hard deadlines with Apple, and we can work backwards from there.
Exactly.
Maybe some milestone just to give us some kind of shape to this. We're not trying to be too anal and like we don't want to get bogged down in process too much. There's only three of us. Yep. But having some specific dates is really going to be helpful.
I mean, broad strokes. End of October, having the prototype. Give us November to like fix all the bugs and refinements. So prototype meaning like it just does the bare basic, and then like maybe we don't worry about we don't worry about like saving the count and that kind of stuff. We're just trying
like
to
server stuff, or like we're trying to do it bare bones to start with here. What can we get away with without doing any kind of server side stuff? What can we get away with without doing anything complicated? Like it may end up being the first version is maybe very simple to bake, or I will be eating my words and we'll be like, oh my god, it was like tearing out my hair to get that to work.
Oh, we'll have moments like that. But that'll be, so I think that'll be fine. I think that, and then for you, the podcast, and for Aaron, just basically trying to at least get us back to that state of like where that kanji database was and like how we can parse it. I think that's a fair set use of your time.
For coding wise, I think once you've created something to start with, I might be able to jump in because I have probably the least experience with the. Well, I have no experience with the Kanji stuff. You guys have already worked on in the past, and maybe even the least experience with SwiftUI.
I think it might also be helpful. I don't know if you would want to work with Aaron about setting up the core data. Forget the cloud, the Calcut sync stuff is that not happening.
Yeah,
because we don't need it.
I haven't really done much with core data. Certainly nothing recent. So I don't know.
Yeah, so
we can figure out together.
We can figure out core data recent.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that sounds like a good plan. As for like when I'm available during the week and all, I mean, we can discuss individual availability off this meeting offline.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else, or are we gonna can we wrap it up? I think it was pretty good.
Yeah. Aaron, you've been.
Yeah, we'll talk about
pretty quiet
where we're at with that later. Yeah.
Aaron's quiet because he's busy. He's like doing stuff.
Well, I'm trying to do stuff with this bundle identifier thing, but I don't know if it's. Well, we'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
So that's
we'll see you. Talk about it next week.
Yeah, this is how it goes though. In the beginning of a project, it's always a little messy. You're setting up infrastructure. You're trying to figure out how you're gonna do the process, especially when you're like new people kind of collaborating together. You're not part of some established company, maybe that has their own system. So we're just kind of figuring out as we go, and hopefully, for those that may be listening or watching this, if there's a video version someday, hopefully, you're learning something along with us.
So probably by December, we'll all have gray hairs and pulling them out.
I already got gray hairs apparently.
Yeah. Or have more.
We're all going to be just
screaming in anger and frustration
over a watch app, especially I'm guessing on the Series 3.
Oh jeez.
If it works on Series 3 though, it'll work on anything.
All right, I'll have to figure that one out for you guys. Yeah, fair point.
I think that's good. So cool. I guess that's it for our inaugural episode of the Side Project Spotlight. Where Philly Coca presents Side Project Spotlight, whatever we're calling this thing.
Yes.
Our Kanji flashcard app.
Philly Coco presents Side Project Spotlight.
There you go.
There we go.
Excellent name. Cool. It's going to be a good logo.